everybody, and welcome to Fox Sports Central. I'm filling in this week for poor old Duncan Armstrong, who's been laid out low with a flu. Duncan, mate, we hope you're feeling better soon. Some great guests on the show today, as you've heard, but first, let's head to the Fox Sports News Centre for all the latest news with Caroline Searcy.
Thank you and hello, Wally. Retiring Australian rugby coach Rod Macqueen has told over 84,000 fans at Stadium Australia just how good it is to be an Australian after the Wallabies' historic win over the British and Irish Lions. The Wallabies came from behind several times to win by 6 points in the third and deciding game, the first time they'd beaten the Lions in a series. And it was the ideal send-off for Macqueen. He'd announced before the game this would be his last match as coach, and the team did the right thing. Macqueen finding it hard to control his emotions.
Rod Macqueen.
It's been a pleasure being involved with such a fine group of people over the last 4 years. And to everyone out there, it's bloody good to be Australian. Thank you.
Australia's Adam Scott is in contention.
Welcome back to Fox Sports Central. What a win to the Wallabies last night to take the series against the Lions. To tell us all about that game and the series, would you please welcome two players who've been right in the thick of this memorable three-test encounter, Steve Larkham and Toutai Kefu, with our resident guru, Greg Martin. Now, fellas, I've got to ask you, you've been in some memorable matches, some great test series. How does this one rate? From an outsider looking in, it seemed particularly tough.
Certainly from my point of view, Wally, it'd probably have to rank up there with the World Cup final. You know, with the support and the interest leading into the series, it was just fantastic. I couldn't believe the interest into the first test match in the Gabba. The streets were full of just the reddest sea of red, and even the grandstands. Unbelievable.
Steve, pretty disappointing, I guess, to miss out on that last match. But Elton Flatley, your replacement, he did pretty well.
Yeah, he did. He's been playing very well all year for Queensland, and he came into this game on short notice. I suppose he only sort of found out on Thursday that he was definitely going to play. But he's been training well with the side since the start of the season, and you know, he's certainly a very class player, and he shone out there last night.
These guys are very humble, I know, Wally, but the best thing about it for me was, in the last 2 years as a rugby fan, they win the close ones. This Wallaby team is one, it's got to be our greatest team ever, and of course Rod Macqueen wrapped it up last night. He's our greatest coach ever in terms of results, but every time there's a close match or there's a comeback to be made, this Wallaby team does it. It's incredible. It's not because of luck. It's not because of luck, it's because of planning and how they conduct themselves on the field. They are the calmest team ever seen.
Greg, we're just having a look here at the match scoreboard. Just take us through that. A couple of tries to Daniel Herbert, but really the boot of Burke was pretty good.
It was. I think it was 7 from 9 in the end, and Herbert scoring one each side of half-time. The game, how did it feel, Kev? Like, it kept on. The lead changed a few times. Did you feel you had it in control?
No, not at all. We thought the game was going to go right down to the wire.
Well, it did.
It could have gone either way. You know, it was a bit the Melbourne test, you could pretty much say that, you know, we were going to win the game 15 minutes out, but certainly this went down to the very last minute.
Bernie, you would have been watching that, and Andrew Walker, what happened there? Didn't trust Rod Moore to make the tackle? Well, here's a magic moment. We may as well talk about that first. That was the first bit of quick ball that we had in that first half, and we scored a try. Did that give you feel confident when you watch that?
Yeah, we didn't get a lot of ball. I think that was the first time we put a number of phases together, and I think it just showed that once we can put the phases together, we're a very dangerous side, and we probably got a few more opportunities in the second half, but in the first half we took that one opportunity to great effect.
Well, last week it took Roffey after half-time to spark the comeback. What was said at half-time last night? Was everyone confident that the plan was going to work?
Certainly. I think the good thing about not only the Melbourne test, but throughout all the test series is that as a team we've been able to soak up a lot of pressure, and we've been able to scramble well, especially in defence. And you know, we've been trying to hang in there. But and just wait for the rolls and the momentums to come, and certainly once they came, we took full advantage of them.
It wasn't a technically beautiful game last night, was it, in terms of purity of rugby, but I suppose who gives a stuff in the end. But the second half you came out and, well, they scored an early try. Did that rock you a little bit? Well, you were heavily involved. I know you rushed out. You're coming across here now. You only just get into position there. I think, what happened? Was Herbie talking to you from the outside? We do have some Lions fans. Was Herbie yelling at you from the outside, or how did that occur?
Oh, it was certainly Herbie's fault. It was his man, and no, I mean, if you look at the three tests, I think whoever started the second half the quickest, or scored points right after half time, have gone on to win the game.
Well, that penalty we just saw there from Wilkinson, 23 all. They only scored 3 points while Daniel Herbert was in the sin bin. How important was that?
Well, very important. I thought
it could have been they could have opened up a bit of a gap there with playing against 14 men. Did you guys make a resolve? Have a resolve?
Well, a few things we had to do differently. Scrums and lineouts. I think Georgie Smith had to stand at 5'8", so it disrupted us. But like I said, we've been able to soak that kind of pressure up and just scramble well.
Well, mate, you certainly... well, there is Herbie's incident. What did you think? It was definitely a penalty. Did he deserve to be sin binned? There was a lot of other incidents in the game, which were technical fouls, that destroyed the game, whereas O'Driscoll popped straight up. What was your feeling, Bernie?
Certainly a dangerous tackle, and that's the way the referee judged it. But by the same token, the British and Irish Lions were getting away with a lot of professional fouls throughout the whole game, and we were quite disappointed that they didn't get a yellow card at some stage through the game as well.
Toutai, you seem to have cemented your place at number 8. What about the debut of Justin Harrison? He went pretty well, didn't he?
Oh, unbelievable. He certainly deserved his spot this year throughout the Super 12. He's probably one of the form second rowers all year, and then certainly the Australian A game against the Lions where the Lions had their first defeat. He had a major role in that.
He came under some pretty harsh criticism there. You see him just getting to know Martin Johnson there intimately. Who, me? But he came under some criticism along with the Wallabies from Austin Healey in his column with The Guardian. Did that do anything to fire up the boys?
You want me to answer that? We obviously read the paper the day of the game, and I suppose a few of the players in the British and Irish Lions side felt that they were hard done by throughout the season, and Austin was probably one of those players, and he was probably trying to get a little bit back towards the coach and the management in the press, I suppose. And I think most players get on with him off the field. It's just some things that he writes in the papers that probably don't go down too well.
Now, Toutai, you had some pretty big... it was a great series for you, and we'd just like to have a look at a few highlights of yourself. Do you want to run us through them? Just tell us how you did it.
Yes, I think I turned the ball over here.
You got hammered here.
Yes, the ball. I actually lose the ball, but I got some redemption here. I think I made some good ground. No, I was pretty happy with my my series. Obviously, a couple of mistakes, but didn't lead to anything devastating. I was pretty happy. I think I didn't get to run the ball as much as I would have liked, but I made my tackles and did everything I was asked to.
It was pretty fierce, wasn't it? I mean, the English Lions. I mean, it seemed a particularly fierce contest at the Rucks and Mauls. There was a lot going on, wasn't there? It wasn't necessarily clean either.
Yeah, certainly. Look, I think a lot of people don't realise how physically aggressive that they are, and especially in Northern Hemisphere, they play a lot different style to what we play in the Southern. We like to throw the ball around. We like to have forwards that run like backs. But certainly up there, they're tight. Their game's moulded around the tight five and physical intimidation. And they're a very aggressive side.
Stephen, I guess that this physical intimidation, I mean, you seem to be a target. I don't know if you felt that on the field, but from an outsider looking in, you copped a couple of cheap shots over the course of the series?
Yeah, I suppose. In the last game that I played in, in late stages of the second half, I got a few cheap shots. That one probably wasn't so bad, but a couple of these were, a little bit dangerous. It's something that we've come to expect now.
Is that the one you hurt your shoulder on?
I did hurt my shoulder there a little bit, yeah. I think the next one was a little bit worse, but it's something that we expect going into games, and we've sort of got a game strategy to counter that.
Just on your shoulder, we saw you there copping a few decent hits on your shoulder. What's the status? Is it are you looking like playing the Tri-Nations, or how are you feeling?
I had an MRI on Friday, and it basically cleared me of any severed nerve, and I'm starting to get a little bit of feeling back in the arm now, so I'm pretty confident that I'll be right in a couple of weeks, and whether that's the first Tri-Nations game or at some stage through the Tri-Nations, I'm pretty confident I'll be back.
Toutai, there's a lot of rugby. I mean, as fans, we love it, but we talk about the Tri-Nations upcoming. You don't get a lot of time to prepare. I believe in 3 days you're heading off to South Africa.
Yeah, the first game of the Tri-Nations is this week, South Africa and New Zealand. But I suppose the biggest thing with our team is because there's so much rugby. We've got a new coach coming on board. He might bring some fresh ideas, a fresh approach. We've got a lot of young players that haven't done what we've done in the past. For example, Tri-Nations, Bledisloe Cup. So of course, they're always looking forward to do well, and we've been there and done that. But we're still geared for a big season.
Listen, we're probably getting ahead of ourselves. What about the celebrations last night? How do you celebrate defeating the English Lions?
It was very difficult for myself. Obviously, I didn't take part in the game last night, but still sort of felt a part of the team. I think most of the boys realise that we've got a very long season ahead of us still. That's sort of the first series out of the way, but we've still got obviously the Tri-Nations to defend and the Bledisloe Cup, so we're not getting carried away.
That was the end, and that was after that line-out win. Did you get a feeling, when Justin Harrison grabbed that line-out ball out of Johnson with 1 minute 50 to go? Did you realise the significance? Do you know how long there is to go?
Yeah, certainly. In the last 5 minutes, you're always looking up at the scoreboard to see how much time there is actually left. And when he actually took that line-out ball, I was so relieved. And I think most of the other players were as well.
Was that as important as Mark Connors last year over at the Bledisloe when Eales kicked the goal to beat the All Blacks? Was that the same sort of incident, wasn't it? You snatched the pressure that's on in those last few minutes. You're a championship team. You win them in the last few seconds, and last night was great again.
Yeah.
Just tell me, I don't know if this is true, but I heard that Justin Harrison, he went into the English Lions locker room after the match to exchange jerseys, and Martin Johnson ushered him out. Any truth in that story, or...?
That's the first I've heard of that. I actually went into the dressing rooms and changed with Scotty Cornell, and I had a good chat with him, but I don't know about that one.
So maybe I'm just trying to be controversial here.
No, I saw Harrison and Johnson speaking for a couple of minutes, friendly on the field after the game. So there was niggle on the field. You were able to leave that behind? Did you have a beer with them after the game?
Oh, certainly. What happens on the field stays on the field.
Yeah, exactly.
So listen, apart from a great series win, a big moment, handing over from Macqueen to Jones. Obviously, Stephen, you've spent a lot of time with both coaches, with Jones down at the Brumbies. How do you see that panning out?
Well, I think Rod's certainly done a lot for Australian rugby, and Eddie sort of followed in his shoes to an extent. He took over from the Brumbies after Rod finished up, and we basically used a similar game plan down there. And I think obviously Eddie will have a few new ideas and probably bringing a new lease of life to the side. A lot of the players haven't played under Eddie before, so I think it'll be very good for the side. Rod's done exceptionally well. He's had a great record, and he probably feels it's time for himself to move on now.
Can you nominate anywhere specifically that you think the game of the Wallabies will change under Eddie?
I'd like to see us run the ball a little bit more, get it wide. Obviously, the series against the British and Irish Lions was pretty dour, one in the forwards, but I think in the Tri-Nations, all three sides will be trying to throw the ball around wide, and Brumbies had a lot of success with that this year, and I think Eddie will bring that in.
Well, before we get to Eddie, could you pay a quick bit of homage to Rod Macqueen? There's never been a coach like him in Australia's rugby history, our winningest coach, and he steps out under his terms. Have you got a few words to say about your time under Rod Macqueen as a Wallaby?
I was fortunate to have time under Greg Smith, and then there was Rod Macqueen, and I certainly had a lot of fun under Rod Macqueen. As he's gotten older, he's become more of just one of the boys and one of the players. So I've had a lot of fun with him.
Bernie?
Certainly Rod was there. He gave me my opportunity from second grade into the Brumbies side, and then he made the transition from me to 5'8", from fullback to 5'8". So He's been very instrumental in my career, and I certainly wish him the best in his future career.
Boys, there's a little bit of talk about next year it won't be Super 12, it'll be Super 14.
No, 2003, I think.
2003, excuse me. So with only 30,000 registered rugby union players in Australia, we're doing pretty well.
Yeah, I think so. The only problem is, will we have the player depth? There's a lot of players this year have gone overseas, and obviously over the last couple of years they've gone overseas as well. But there's also a lot of good players that are potentially good players that can play at Super 12 level, and this would be a big opportunity for them.
Well, that's right. The Brumbies would never, if we didn't try to go into the unknown, the Brumbies would never be in the Super 12. They wouldn't have won it. It'd still be Queensland, New South Wales dominating rugby here in Australia. The Brumbies have been the greatest thing that's happened to Australian rugby. They've opened up new ways. Do you think that's what the fourth team? It could take rugby in a totally different direction in our country.
Yeah, definitely. I think when the Brumbies first started up, obviously we got a lot of the fringe players from the other states. We got a good coach behind us, which certainly helped. But the players were very keen to do well for themselves. Obviously they hadn't had a shot at the other states, so that'll be the same situation in 2003, and I'm sure that fourth Super 12 side will be very competitive.
Well, guys, look, congratulations on a great series win. Good luck in the Tri-Nations. Toutai, Steve, Marto, thanks very much for your input, guys. Well done. After the break, we'll talk to Bushrangers captain Matt Elliott and our own David Hooks about the Aussies slaying all before them on the Ashes tour.
Last night, a packed house at Stadium Australia witnessed the historic 29-23 victory by the world champion Wallabies.
The moment that changed 102 years of rugby history.
And this is it for Australia.
For the Wallabies and their fans among the crowd of over 84,000, time to celebrate Australia's first ever series win against the Lions. Millions more in clubs and pubs around the country breaking into the national song. From Sydney to London, Aussie expats joined the celebrations. That army of normally vocal Lions supporters silent. Plenty to cheer about during the series decider. 2 tries each to both teams, with penalty goals getting the Wallabies home by 6 points. Celebrating his 21st birthday, Australia's George Smith earned man of the match. The dreadlock flanker brilliant in defence and at the breakdown. Justin Harrison also a star in his debut test, silencing Lions player Austin Healey, who labelled him an ape and a plod.
Doesn't have a strong command of the English language when he's calling me a plod. There's not too many syllables in that word, so,
The buzzword for the Wallabies was that unique Australian adjective, bloody. After his last match as Australian coach, even the normally reserved Rod Macqueen allowed himself to be a knocker.
It's bloody good to be Australian. Thank you.
Andrew McKinlay, National 9 News.
And we'll have more on the Test victory later in sport. In the news ahead,
Trent Barrett again played strongly, but it was not all good news as he was placed on report. All positive on the scoreboard for the Dragons as they took the match by 10. Something the
Burke traded penalty goals. Australia taking the lead via Burke's kicking. Danny Grucock putting more than a boot into Nick Stiles.
That's a shocker. And the knee straight into the back of number 1.
Jason Robinson scored the Lions' first try in a deserted corner of Australia's line. The Wallabies somehow finding space for their reply.
Here's Walker, Roth and Herbert.
Another Wilkinson penalty got the Lions within 3 points at half-time. Soon after, the 5/8 put them in front.
Wilkinson takes it.
The Wallabies regained the lead as Herbert scored his second before the same player was sin-binned.
That is a very ugly tackle.
During Herbert's 10-minute absence, the score was tied at 23-all, while Rod Moore left his mark on the tourists. But Burke kicked the home team 6 points clear. Justin Harrison's crucial line-out steal helping the Wallabies hold on in the dying stages. With the world champions now holding every major trophy they can win, retiring coach Rod Macqueen wished for one legacy.
Confident side respects their opposition and an arrogant side doesn't. And for as long as the Wallabies are around, I hope that will be their motto.
Andrew McKinlay, National 9 News.
Pace bowler Dave.
To you by Victoria Bitter for a hard-earned first.
Tonight on Fox Sports News, the Wallabies' historic series win over the Lions, and what a farewell for coach Rod Macqueen.
Gregan wants it quickly. Here it is. It's a try number 2 for Daniel Herbert.
Very proud of Rod. You know, it's great to be able to, even though it hasn't been a focus, to send Rod out on a great note. Like, it's obviously, you know, very pleasing to send him out on a great note.
In 2 years, but the Wallabies have finally celebrated an historic series win over the British and Irish Lions after winning the third and deciding test last night at Stadium Australia. In front of 84,000 rugby fans, coach Rod Macqueen was given the retirement package he so desperately wanted. Skipper John Eales proudly took possession of the Tom Richards Cup, which is now in illustrious company alongside the World Cup, the Bledisloe Cup and the Tri-Nations Cup.
The Lions roared loudly, but the Wallabies soared higher.
For Rod Macqueen, the full-time whistle signalled the end to more than a test match. It ended a glittering 4 years, during which time his team has claimed every major trophy in world rugby. Never one to seek the limelight, his on-field speech was simple but impassioned.
It's bloody good to be Australian. Thank you.
Later, he still refused to talk about himself, preferring to acclaim his players and the Lions.
I thought it was a very special effort from the players. It is a nice way to go out on the basis of how they played.
His skipper spoke for the Wallabies.
Very proud of Rod. You know, it's great to be able to, even though it hasn't been a focus, to send Rod out on a great note. Like, it's obviously, you know, very pleasing to send him out on a great note, to start Justin on a great note. You know, Berkey's 50th, there was a lot to play for. First series win against the Lions. Tonight meant a lot.
It also meant a lot to the 84,000 there and 500 million around the world watching, and it proved to be a wonderful decider. Not for 1 second of the 80 minutes was there a confirmed winner. Macqueen forced to go through a roller coaster of emotions as the lead changed time and time again. The Wallabies led 16-13 at half-time. Their first half try scored by Daniel Herbert. Moments after the restart, the Lions were back in front.
Toutai Kefu trying to get out there. Wilkinson takes it.
When Herbert crossed for his second in the 50th minute, Australia were 3 clear. But 2 minutes later, he was sin-binned for a high tackle. And for Macqueen, the next 10 minutes decided the match.
To keep team scoreless, I think, was terrific over that period of time. Played the game very smart, which is one of the things that we talk about a lot in the Wallabies, just trying to be a little bit smarter here and there, and certainly I thought they did that, particularly during that time.
From there, Burke booted the Wallabies to victory, but there were many heroes in the Australian team, not least the tireless work by George Smith and the brilliant display by debutant Justin Harrison, who terrorised the Lions line-out. And the steal he'll remember most came 2 minutes from time.
The boys were into me, they didn't want to contest, and I was firing back at them that I did want to contest the line out, and look, I knew it was a tough time for the Lions and a tough time for us, and I knew that Johnson was the captain. I knew that they'd look to him for inspiration. I'm pretty sure he would have called the line out to himself, so a lot of things had to go right, and they all did, so I think the moons are aligned tonight for me.
He also had this for Lions' late withdrawal, Austin Healey, who called him an ape and a plod during the week.
The Austin Healey wasn't playing tonight, so he didn't really have much effect on the game. You know, he seems to doesn't have a strong command of the English language when he's calling me a plod. There's not too many syllables in that word, so, you know. I'm pretty happy about the game I've played, and he can think about the game he should have played. It was very good to
to see him have his test debut, and as I say, it was a special moment for him to be in the side and obviously perform the way he did the last game.
The Lions return home as the first to leave these shores as losers in 102 years. The skipper feeling the pain.
I've got to say you couldn't ask any more from those players tonight, because half of them were held together with sticky tape going out on the field, and we came up short.
Their coach also bitterly disappointed, but willing to acknowledge a world champion side.
I think you've got to give a big pat on the back to Australia. That's the first thing. They played better than we did.
They might have lost the rugby, but the Lions have stormed
British and Irish Lions in a series for the first time. It's taken 102 years, but in his last match as coach, Rod Macqueen's Wallabies edged out the tourists 29-23 in a fighting display from both sides. Daniel Herbert scored either side of half-time, and Matt Burke kicked 7 out of 9 to steer Australia to victory.
A record crowd to watch a Lions match of over 84,000 turned out. The Wallabies into an early lead from Matt Burke's boot.
So inside the 3rd minutes, and it's the Wallabies leading by 3-0.
After an exchange of penalties, the Lions went in for the first score of the match.
There's 3-on-2 here. Overlap, it has to be a try. Robinson!
The tough conversion chance was no problem for Johnny Wilkinson.
How good is that?
But the Lions couldn't keep up the pressure, and a bad mistake from Henderson gave Australia momentum.
Terrible knock-on by Henderson.
Daniel Herbert finding space inside to convert the pressure into points.
And Herbert! Splendid try by the Australians down the short side.
Down 16-13 at the break, Johnny Wilkinson backed himself to put the Lions back into the lead early in the second half.
Wilkinson takes it! Just a steady build-up of pressure.
The Wallabies needed to hit back quickly, and following a win at the line-out for debut maker Justin Harrison, Daniel Herbert got on the end of his second score of the night.
It's a try, number 2 for Daniel Herbert.
Brian O'Driscoll was cut down by a high tackle from Herbert, the offence earning him 10 minutes in the bin, Wilkinson levelling the scores with the resulting penalty.
Not a problem for Johnny Wilkinson.
But the Lions couldn't put any more points on the board with Herbert off the field. In fact, the Wallabies picked up a penalty when John Eales was pushed in a line-out.
He's the man for the moment. What a kick by Burke, his 4th penalty goal.
After adding another penalty, the Lions had to score a converted try to win, but Harrison's steal 5 metres out effectively ended their hopes. They went down attacking, but the Wallabies deserved their first ever series win.
And this is it for Australia. Roared loudly, but the Wallabies soared higher.
Congratulations to Australia. I thought they played very well. They played well under pressure. They kept the ball for quite long periods of time at the tackle area. We didn't handle the pressures as well at line out of the tackle. So I think you've got to give a big pat on the back to Australia. That's the first thing. They played better than we did.
There was never any single moment during that game that there was a confirmed winner, right up until the final whistle. When Walks ran out, took the ball out of touch, I think there's a lot of very, very relieved gold jerseys out there.
The Melbourne Storm's hopes of cementing
his triumph over the British and Irish Lions, clinching the series 2-1 in Sydney last night. The win ensures coach Rod Macqueen bows out on a perfect note by celebrating the first Wallaby victory over the Lions in 102 years.
This is it for Australia.
By clinching a series win over the British and Irish Lions, the Wallabies have conquered the only major rugby challenge to elude them in the last century. As well, it provides a fitting farewell for Australia's most successful coach, Rod Macqueen.
To the Wallabies and John Eales, it's been a pleasure being involved with such a fine group of people over the last 4 years. And to everyone out there, it's bloody good to be Australian. Thank you.
The man to be anointed, John Eales' successor, made a sparkling Test debut, terrorising the Lions, who'll rue a ragged line-out performance, most decisively 5 metres out in the dying minutes with a winning try in sight.
I knew that Johnson was the captain. I knew that they'd look to him for inspiration. I'm pretty sure he would have called the line out to himself. So a lot of things had to go right, and they all did.
Former rugby league winger Jason Robinson scored the first try of the match, his 10th of the tour. The Wallabies opener came out of nothing 3 minutes before the break to give Australia a 16-13 half-time lead. Lions fly-half Johnny Wilkinson soon had the visitors back in front with sustained attack before Nathan Gray and Wallaby number 8 Toutai Kefu battered holes in the Lions' defence to create the space for a second.
Gregan wants it quickly. Here it is. It's a try, number 2.
Down a man with Daniel Herbert's sin bin, the Wallabies survived one of the most critical phases of the series.
Of course it has, you know. We put 6-7 weeks of our lives into this, and we come up short.
In his 50th test, Matt Burke slotted 19 points to seal the 6-point victory, Australia's first series win against the Lions, adding the Tom Richards Cup to a bulging trophy cabinet, won under departing coach Rod Macqueen.
With just 7 weeks until the final.
Face-off next could still scrap through by winning their...
Has been synonymous with excellence, yet for all the success the Wallabies have enjoyed, they've never beaten the British and Irish Lions in a full test series dating back to 1899. On Saturday, the Aussies had their chance inside of the stately Sydney Olympic Stadium. 84,000 plus turned out to see if Australia could finish off the tourist after the two sides had split the first two encounters of this three-match series. Watch the Lions work the left side of the field before Jason Robinson goes over for the try, cutting Australia's lead to just 1 in the early going. But the Wallabies respond. The teamwork, the precision passing, and the ball will eventually end up in the capable hands of Daniel Herbert. He takes it in to put Australia ahead 14-10. The scrappy Lions didn't go away. They worked their way into the lead through Johnny Wilkinson, whose try gave the visitors an 18-16 advantage as this match went back and forth. Now it's the Wallabies' turn, and it's a familiar name getting credit for his second try of the match. Australia continues to pound the ball down to the line before the Wallabies find an opening through a cutting Daniel Herbert. He once again finds pay dirt, and the Aussies are back on top. An American football-like tackle would get Herbert in trouble a little later, and it resulted in Wilkinson booting the penalty that leveled the score at 23-all after 52 minutes. But like they had done in the previous two tests against Australia, the Lions failed to score a single point in the last 20 minutes as the Wallabies send coach Rod Macqueen into retirement on a winning note.
Judging from some of the comments of the players about tonight, I don't know how I'm not looking forward to waking up tomorrow morning. I think it might be a few celebrations.
When you're playing against the whole Northern Hemisphere and you're just one team, it was certainly, very intimidating, I guess. And when I ran out to the stadium tonight, you can't hear anything in the dressing sheds, and I had no idea about the crowd and things like that. And when I ran out, I certainly drew some inspiration from the crowd because they were fantastic.
And the crowd can also boast of being witness to history as the Wallabies achieved the only major rugby challenge to elude them in the last 102 years. The British and Irish Lions can take solace in the fact that they have the decided edge in the head-to-head match record.
Bizarre news coming out of the Tour de France.
Hello, everyone. Hello and welcome to The Fact. Now, look, as you already know, we're unabashed sports fans here. Now, some people are just a little bit more unabashed than others, like these ones in the British and Irish Lions supporting party. Have a look. There you go. We've got the news report going on. Just a couple of card-carrying yobbos first off, making life hard for the Channel 10 reporter. Then we've got this one. I love the funny hat, and the paddle pop lion is particularly good. And here's the classic. Look, Mum, I have breasts. And of course, then we've got Troy Casadali doing Waltzing Matilda with this terrific result, I think. Yeah. Actually, I'm not entirely sure that was a Lions supporter. That might have just been a music critic. Anyway, look. Sorry, Troy. I'm an unabashed fan of these people tonight. Brave enough to sit next to Rebecca fan Mikey Robbins and Wallaby legend and assistant coach Glenn Ella. We'll talk about it later, but can I just say, Mikey's got his team back. Well done. Wilco, just unleash that rugby passion within.
Well, I just thought it's been a very arduous week for the sports lover and sports watcher, because it has been tough, but we've been treated to, I think, two of the most memorable chapters in Australian sporting history, with the tennis and the rugby. And I think the rugby was just a totally gripping contest. The thing that struck me about it was just the intensity at the breakdown for the Australians throughout the game, their defence, the commitment when they were down a man. I just thought it was an extraordinary performance from the rugby side. Absolutely
You've been
full
yelling
on.
over the weekend, haven't you? You've got very, very sexy.
I'm not sure he's all of a sudden become a rugby convert.
Yeah, well, I was ignoring that bit.
Mr. League over
Know
there.
your history, Rebecca.
Bagging
know
the
your
defence
history.
a couple of weeks ago.
Well,
Turnstile defence.
we're talking about a different game, aren't we? We're talking about one of the best games
game made in
defensively
heaven.
that we've
Hey,
seen.
wait, we're 12 seconds in and you two are at it already. Come on, let's be... Glenn, how good was it for you then, this win?
Oh, it's fantastic. The Wallabies had a lot of pressure on them over the last couple of weeks. Obviously, losing that test in Brisbane, we were fairly ordinary, to be honest.
Shocking, I thought.
Oh, yeah, OK, mate.
Actually, shit house, mate.
Yeah, right. Anyone else want to comment? But the comeback and win the second one in Melbourne, and then the side under those circumstances, you know, one test all, 23 all at 10 minutes to go, come right down the wire, and we got up. Thank Christ for that.
Can I ask, mate, was there a moment in the third test where you thought we've got it, or were you basically pooping your pants right to the end?
I was sitting next to Rod Macqueen, and we never had it right until I think Andrew Walker took the ball out into touch.
Yeah.
Rod was saying, why can't we be 8 points in front instead of 6 or 5? So
you didn't score enough points earlier?
That's right.
What about Justin?
I'll pass it on to the UK.
All right, now, there's been a lot of talk about Justin Harrison and also the terrific relationship he obviously had with Austin Healey.
I'm sorry, if your last name's Healey and your parents give you a first name Austin, you should sue for parental divorce. They may as well have just called him Wanker.
Well, that's putting him kindly.
Well, as it turns out, is that sort of what he is?
So, Major Healey.
Now, you went out to the game.
Yeah, I went out to the game, but just speaking of Justin Harrison moments, I thought that was a great one in the line-out, obviously, but I preferred when it was with the Brumbies versus the Lions, when he bitch-slapped that guy. Do you remember that? When he just like, because he just picked the guy and just went and threw him back, and I just went, you're a legend, just straight away. You know.
What
it
was
was the contempt that they deserved.
Did you say that the next day on Play School?
No, reenacted.
But the notion of Austin Healey and the columns that he wrote, where basically he called Justin Harrison, a plank, a plod and an ape. 3 great words. He also had a go at the Australian weather. He had a go at Pat Rafter and Australian men.
Males, yeah.
Australian males.
Our surf was too rough.
No. Yeah. What was the reaction from not just Justin Harrison but the players? Was it used as motivation? Did they think he was a tosser?
Well, I'd hate to say what the players actually thought of him.
No, please do. You're free to do that.
Look, the guy's a goose. He's got some problems. There's no doubt about that.
I'd love to see it when you weren't afraid to say it.
But it was, he used. The players did use it as motivation, no doubt about that. I was at breakfast with some of the guys and they were commenting about the articles and was just saying a few words. And I'm really hoping that Austin would take the field. You know, he pulled out, I think, half an hour before the game. You know, they wish he'd get on, they'd belt the crap out of him.
Well, listen to us.
What about the Guernsey incident, though? They did swing low, sweet chariot there, didn't they? About as low as the gutter when they didn't swap the Guernsey.
Yeah, I don't know what happened there. I think Justin went in to swap his jersey.
Started bitch-slapping a few guys and stuff.
Yeah. As they do after most of the major games, and, got told to excuse the name, piss off a little bit, and I think that was below the belt. And, I'm glad to see
that phrase certainly is below the belt.
Just for the benefit of the people in the States who don't follow rugby really closely, just the story of Justin Harrison's a great story. 19 years old when he played his first rugby test. He's on the bus playing for University of Lismore and he says, what do I have to do? And they go, just stand fourth in the line-out and get the ball over to our side. He said they didn't mention scrums, rucks, mauls, punching, fighting.
Bitch slapping.
He's only been playing for 5 or 6 years.
So he had about as much idea about the game as you do, Matthew, I guess. If you weren't watching from Melbourne, your Melbourne digs?
Well, yeah, I saw a little bit on the news, but to tell you the truth, I don't know a great deal about it. But I actually played golf with a couple of rugby players and started to watch it a little bit from there, so I'm hoping to pick up more as I go.
What about the notion of using motivation from, you know... If only, Mikey, if only. But can I just one last thing on this, Austin? In fact, aren't we taking it too seriously? Isn't he just a footy player who was going for gags? I mean, essentially, he has had a go at Australian males, at the weather, and that sort of... It's based at Wimbledon, at Pat Rafter. It's what we did on the show last week about the English people, really.
Yeah, but they deserved it last week. No, the thing about him is that even his own fans have come out against him. Like, the guy is seen as being a complete tosser even in England. So that's a real concern, I would have thought, for him. I mean, the guy has got a personality defect, and even the English hate him.
You were, of course, backline coach. This try, the Daniel Herbert try, was a good one. Let's have a little look at this.
Australia surging now.
Now, talk us through this, Glenn.
Great work.
Herbie walks, I taught him all that. Yeah. Joey Roth, quick hands on the inside pass. You know, it was good support play. And we certainly needed to try at that stage.
Does it scare you sometimes? Because Walker can be a bit mercurial. You know, like, you know, he'll have a great 5-10 minutes, then he'll have 2, then he'll do something a little stupid.
Most rugby players do that. Look at Campo.
One thing you like about your sports people and your Australian sports people when they're involved in a contest like that is when it's tough, they really get tough. And Mark, they did hang tough right throughout that game. Sorry. 5 minutes before half-time. 5 minutes before half-time. And then the 10 minutes in the second half.
So, Gary...
Go back there again. You can't let him get away with that, honestly.
I've done it before. I see one, I see the other.
There's about 4 more Eales to get through. Let's do it.
Steve!
Glenn, I've done that before, and I apologise. But
Ella.
you get the meaning in the second half that when they existed with the man down.
Yeah, Gordon. I think it's typical of all Australians, and especially in sport. You know, they do dig deep when their chips are down, and we had to. Obviously that 10 minutes. I think they only got the 3 points. Was a turning point in the game for us.
Glenn, how important have the last 3 years been for Australian rugby? I mean, the game now seems to me to be a popular game again. You know, it was certainly an elitist sport before, but I mean, the crowd there on Saturday night, I just think, is rugby well and truly, you know, a people's game again?
Well, I hope to think so. You know, we've had the support of the Super 12 teams, and that's really started to come to the fore of the Super 12 competition. And playing games of this quality, you look at the All Blacks last year in the Springboks, and Australia winning the Tri-Nations was a great thing for Australian rugby. And the Lions, you know, we haven't seen them for 12 years, so it is a big event. And, you know, we're getting a lot of press, we're getting a lot of good media.
Yeah, go Austin Healey, he gave a lot of press.
And Australia winning the series as well, you know, it's pushed our profile just a little bit further ahead as well.
It's just given.
OK, Matthew Allen, Carlton.
Tonight on Fox Sports News, the Lions head home denying they're sore losers.
I don't know, for some reason there's been elements within the press who've tried to have a back at us from day one, which has been very unfortunate because, as I say, I think we've done a huge amount for rugby in this country.
The horror run continues. Roos star Anthony Stevens out for the season.
When I went down, I knew something was serious, and the physio said to me, "Oh, no, what's wrong? I said, "Oh, no, I'm in big trouble."
And Stuart O'Grady puts a big gap on the field at the Tour de France.
Stuart O'Grady would lead the Tour from the main contenders by 28 minutes. Now, even if Stuart can't climb the Alps, surely he can walk up at that speed.
Good evening, I'm Caroline Searcy. This is Fox Sports News. The majority of the British and Irish Lions squad flew out of Sydney this afternoon, denying they are sore losers. It's been suggested Wallaby lock Justin Harrison was ordered out of the Lions dressing room after Saturday night's third test, but the tourists say that's rubbish and claim they've been targeted by some of the local media from day one of the tour.
Empty-handed, the Lions flew out from Sydney, disappointed to lose their first series against Australia and angry about claims that they were poor sports. Newspaper headlines alleged that victorious Wallaby lock Justin Harrison was snubbed by the tourists when he asked to swap jerseys at Stadium Australia on Saturday night. and was told in no uncertain terms to get out of their dressing room. But that's been vehemently denied by the Lions.
I don't know where that has come from, because Justin Harrison came into the dressing room. Martin Johnson went to the press conference. There was no question of Martin Johnson saying that to Justin Harrison. I mean, it's just another example of things that have been taken totally out of context. John Eales came in and gave his jersey to Martin. All the players swapped their jerseys, so you know, I think it's a bit unfair, really.
The story surrounding Justin Harrison was the final chapter in an often controversial tour by the Lions. But the tourists claim they're innocent and that they're the ones that have been targeted.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know, for some reason there's been elements within the press who've tried to have a bark at us from day one. Which has been very unfortunate, because, as I say, I think we've done a huge amount for rugby in this country. The ARU have been excellent to us in the way that they've looked after us, and you know, we go home with happy memories. Disappointing, as I say, that we didn't win the series, but you know, when you come to the home of the world champions and you're playing in their backyard, and you know, Saturday night was a night I'm sure that Sydney people will remember for a long time.
As the Lions departed, the Wallabies were welcoming a new coach. Brumbies mastermind Eddie Jones officially took over the reins of Australian rugby today, and he admits it's a giant stride up the ladder of his career.
I think it's an enormous step up from provincial rugby to international rugby. I've been lucky enough that the Australian Rugby Union and Rod's allowed a transition period, and I'm very thankful for that, to have some exposure to the national team over the last period of time. But I'm well aware that it's another level up. Obviously, the Australian team's been successful, and we look to improve on those performances.
Today, Jones was in awe of the trophy cabinet that's been left bulging by his predecessor. But having taken over from Rod Macqueen at the Brumbies, Jones admits he's getting used to following in Macqueen's steps.
It seems a similar pattern, doesn't it? I was lucky at the Brumbies that I moved in after Rod, and Rod had a very good management structure and a good playing squad in place, and again with the Wallabies there's a good management structure in place, obviously an extremely successful playing record, and a group of players who are well skilled and well coached and well disciplined.
With the Lions tour behind the Wallabies, Jones now has to lift the side again as they begin their defence of the Tri-Nations series. And you couldn't ask for a more difficult challenge. The first game taking on South Africa in Pretoria.
I think at Pretoria it's obviously one of those grounds that's always difficult to play at, and they have very strong support there. So I'm expecting them to play extremely physical up front game, probably play a bit of field position, and we'll need to come up with strategies to meet those challenges.
To the AFL, and there were some serious injuries in response to reports the World Tournament could be transferred to France. ARU Chief Executive John O'Neill admitted there had been talk of moving the Cup after a dispute over profit sharing, but O'Neill says he has assurances from the IRB that the tournament will be hosted by Australia and New Zealand.
The Australian Rugby Union should have been still celebrating its historic victory over the Lions, but instead officials were busy quashing reports that the 2003 World Cup, which is to be staged in Australia and New Zealand, was about to be transferred to France. Newspaper headlines claimed a dispute over profit sharing between the ARU, the NZRU and World Cup authorities could lead to the drastic move, but that was denied today.
We're astonished at the rumour. It's without substance, it's not true. We are assured and very confident that the World Cup will take place here in Australia and New Zealand in 2003.
John O'Neill did admit negotiations were tense at times, but he stressed that didn't mean the World Cup was in any danger of being moved.
I'm the first to admit that the negotiations have been robust because we're looking for absolute precision. Who does what? What does the IRB do? What does Rugby World Cup do? What does the host union do? Get all the responsibilities laid out on a piece of paper, then lay out who gets what revenue, who pays for what costs, lock it all away so we can get on and run the best World Cup ever.
O'Neill admitted he'd heard rumours there were contingency plans to transfer the Cup to France, but he was assured by IRB and World Cup officials 2 weeks ago that that wasn't the case.
We put that rumour to the meeting and it was categorically denied.
That's good news for the Australian Rugby Union and their New Zealand counterparts, who are equally keen to stage the World Tournament.
Well, it's vitally important for us. It's 20 pool games, 2 quarters, 1 semi-final. It's a big event. There are in fact more Rugby World Cup games in this coming World Cup than were played in the 1987 World Cup.
While Australian and Kiwi rugby officials were busy dousing down talk of a World Cup revolt, at the same time retired Wallabies coach Rod Macqueen was dismissing talk that he could help the Springboks in their Tri-Nations campaign. Newly appointed South African coach Harry Viljoen said he'd like to use Macqueen as a consultant, but the former Wallabies mentor says that won't happen.
I've stated many times that I couldn't coach a side against the Wallabies, and I wouldn't like to have an input into a side against the Wallabies. When I say that, I suppose one of the competitive sides like South Africa and New Zealand, etc. So that certainly won't happen. I've spoken many times to John about that I think there's a certain amount of loyalty, and I make sure that I honour that. So no, that won't happen, but hopefully I'll always be friends with Harry.
Former Newcastle star Matthew Johns is
Australia's biggest rugby supporter.
Hello everyone, I'm Greg Clark. Thanks for joining us as we take another look inside rugby. Well, a lot has happened since our last show a fortnight ago. The Wallabies have broken the Lions' hoodoo, the All Blacks have taken first points in the Tri-Nations, and the Wallabies are on safari in South Africa as they get set to open their Tri-Nations defence. And joining me in the studio tonight will be Phil Kearns, Justin Harrison and James Holbeck, and we'll be crossing to Canberra to talk to injured Wallaby fly half Stephen Larkham. But first up, let's check what's been making headlines. Well, the next era is about to begin. New Wallaby coach Eddie Jones is in South Africa with his team, looking to start their Tri-Nations defence with a long overdue test win in Pretoria. But early Sunday morning they will come up against a Springbok team under siege from the demanding local media. The Wallabies hoping for a better result than their last visit to Loftus Versfeld.
The people at Parliament House in Pretoria think numbers all day, but two of the Wallabies taking in the sights would prefer to forget South Africa's 61-22 majority in 1997.
Yeah, well, obviously the last time we played here is some very bad memories. A few of us were involved in that game, and there's a lot of games since then. We've been successful in a lot of the campaigns we've had to date, obviously since that time, and I suppose all of those things, as good as they are, it doesn't sort of wipe away the bad taste in your mouth from that game in 97 that was very much a low point of certainly a lot of our careers.
Foley, George Gregan, Joe Roth, Owen Finnegan and Matt Cobain are the Wallabies seeking personal retribution, but it's easy to tell who didn't play. John Eales had a knee injury.
It's not a relevant match for us as a team. I think that sort of lost its relevance a long time ago. This team now is totally different from the team that played that particular day. You learn your lessons and you move on from those experiences.
Eales will pack down alongside regular second row partner David Giffen, who predictably returned at the expense of Justin Harrison.
I'm very grateful to be back in the side. It's something you realise how much you actually miss it when you're out of it. And I haven't been out of it for a couple of years now, and it was very tough watching that great win by the side, and it's good now to be back for the first Tri-Nations game.
It's the first game as national coach for Eddie Jones, and the Super 12 winner with the Brumbies is ready for the test.
I think the difference between Super 12 footy and international rugby is the collective class of the players, and because you've got in Super 12 players, you probably generally have one or two players who are maybe struggling a little bit at that level, where at test level you've got 15 players or 22 players all at the top of their game.
South African selectors have identified a couple of weak links following the 12-3 loss to the All Blacks. Percy Montgomery, who kicked 1 from 4, has been replaced at fullback by Conrad Yankers, while the goal-kicking duties fall on Bram van Straten, who takes the number 12 jumper.
I think he's played there in the past. We've come against him when he's been at inside centre. He's a very strong player, very solid, and obviously goal-kicking is one of his strengths, so that's why he's been put in the team.
The New South Wales Country Cockatoos are...
I could hold my head up high, and it's been a while since I first saw you. And it's been a while since I can stand on my own 2 feet again. And
Yes, the 2001 Tri-Nations is underway and the All Blacks have the most to sing about so far. More on that shortly, but now let's meet the panel. Phil Kearns, good evening to you. How are you?
Clarkie, terrific. It's been a little while since we've chatted.
That's right.
And great to be back.
I hope you're in good form because we've got a bit to chat about. We might revisit some of the Lions tactics as well. It's a bit of a Brumby-a-thon tonight. Later we'll talk to Steve Larkham in Canberra, but in the studio is one of the most unluckiest players in world rugby at the moment. Brumby and one Test Wallaby, Justin Harrison. How are you?
Good, good. Wouldn't say unlucky.
Well, I think a lot of people would say unlucky. Well, you played for Australia. Happy as Larry, but I think most people thought, well, surely there'd be a spot in the 22, but wasn't quite right.
You make your own luck in this world. I'll get another chance.
I'm sure you will. Another unlucky Brumby and Wallaby squad member is also with us, James Holbeck. I don't know what you've done. You've either run over a black cat, walked under a ladder and all those sort of suspicious things because every year injuries are robbing you of opportunities.
Yeah, I've had a pretty ordinary run, probably for the last 4 years, from my shoulder reconstruction in '98 through to hamstring strain on Saturday. So I think I'm about to turn that all around, of course. I've been saying that for 4 years, but I'm sure this is going to be the time.
Let's hope so. Justin Harrison, what a magnificent debut performance. Everyone's reminding you about it, Justin. Take us through it. You know, the line-out steals, you remember that.
All right. If you don't remind me about it, I'll remind you about it. Don't mind about that. No, look, you know, it's just part of the game, and look. With line-outs and lifting now, you're only as good as your lifters, and the blokes there got me up there, so all I had to do was stick my hands in front of the ball.
Yeah, I mean, that's the only thing they were going to do, wasn't it? There was nothing else they were going to do. Like, you had to have a go at it.
Well, yeah, you've got to read the line-out a little bit, and that last one, you know, could have gone either way, and I thought I'd take a punt and have a go at it.
Well, you chopped off all their ball between the three jumpers, or especially at the back of the line-out. And the only weapon they had from sort of 25, 30 metres out was the catch and drive at Johnson at 2. I mean, he's their go-to man when they're in trouble, and then line out for the last two tests was in trouble.
Yeah, the Lions play the traditional style of game, and I think that they, under Graham Henry, were attempting to play a bit more adventurous and throw to six a little bit. Possibly their hookers weren't used to that, coming from the Northern Hemisphere, and we knew if we put pressure on 4 and 6 that they'd resort to 2, and it's pretty ordinary ball for your backs. So, hence the defence lines come up, and we were able to shut them down.
Well, one good thing about you playing for the Wallabies and playing for Australia and the Brumbies is that you've made a friend forever, basically, in Austin Healey. That was well publicised, you know, his comments leading into the third and final test, but it probably started in earlier incidents here, Australia A. Healey had a lot to say in this incident here. And of course, when the Brumbies played the Lions, we'll have a look at him intercepting this pass from Paddy Howard, sticking the finger up, and it really got right up your nose, didn't it?
Well, you know, this sort of thing tends to get on a lot of blokes' nerves. You know, just score the try and go back and not be a dope about it. But look, I mean, I guess he's a competitor, and that's the way he goes about releasing his frustrations.
What were you saying to him there?
Oh, I told him it was
can we broadcast it?
A good try and all that sort of stuff.
He's a goose. I mean, the whole world knows he's made a goose of himself in the press out here and at home, and you just have to go around town and speak to Lions supporters, speak to Northern Hemisphere people, and they'll tell you the same thing about him, and some of his own players will tell you exactly the same thing. He's got a lot of ground to make up for with rugby supporters and the public.
Well, I've sent him a card for Christmas, but it's via Egypt, so I'm not sure it'll get there, mate. So don't hold your breath.
Just one more thing, and maybe the final comment on the fact that you're not in the 22-man squad. Someone likened you to Damien Martin in the Australian cricket team. Had an opportunity, scored some runs, thought he'd done enough to be there, but you just don't do it on one performance, do you? I mean, you can't knock Giff, you can't knock any of the Wallaby second rowers over the last 3 or 4 years.
Well, you can knock them when no one's listening. No, look, you know, they're fantastic, proven international locks, and they've set the benchmark for a number of years now. And certainly they're two blokes that I've watched play and learnt how to play my own style of game off them. So they deserve their position, and it's been fantastic helping them prepare for these tests. If I get another opportunity to play, that would be fantastic as well, and hopefully I'll make the most of it.
To use the cricketing parlance, probably not Damien Martin, but Glenn Trimble, the one Test.
Yeah, I'm wondering if that was
Don't go there. Let's move on. And the Lions, what a magnificent series it was. It really gave the game here just a great debut. Started in Brisbane. It wasn't a great start for us, though, was it? That opening try to Robinson. Hang on a minute, this wasn't supposed to happen.
Well, they took us by surprise. We always knew they were going to run the ball wide, but they just did it so well in Brisbane and caught us unaware. And here you see them just taking it to the line and running straight through us. And we changed our defensive style after that to suit the game and did much better in the third test.
Yeah, everything in that first test just looked to be half a yard too slow, just off the pace, and you put that down to rustiness, I guess.
Yeah, and I think the fact we hadn't played a test for 3 weeks leading into that one, the game I think against the Maoris was the one before that. But yeah, you're right, we're a little bit off the pace, and they played extremely well. I mean, we just saw Jason Robinson before. We talked about a goose, but he is a genius, Jason Robinson. Austin Heal, I've got to say, is a pretty good footballer himself, but Robinson's got everything. He's phenomenal. But in the second and third tests, he just did not see the football. Australia defended extremely well and didn't let it happen.
You had a taste of the action late in the piece in this one, your comeback test after playing in that 97 disaster in Pretoria. But good to see Herbie get a double there. He'd been in quite a while between drinks as far as tries go for the Wallabies, but a nice feeling out there towards the end of the match.
Yeah, it was a good time to come on. It was still, the game was still in the balance, and I was hoping to come on a bit earlier, but obviously they had more confidence in Grazie and Herbie doing the job. But when Grazie got injured, I came on, and it was just great to get back on there after 4 years of frustration.
It was interesting to see that last try of Herbie's where Michael Foley threw the pass to him. I've got to say, maybe lucky for Foles he never followed my style of the game, because I definitely would have hogged it then. Absolutely no doubt. He was too close to the line.
That's why you scored all those fantastic tries.
Well, right from the outset, it was obvious that it was going to be a tough series against the Lions, and while the Terrorists and their media in particular were bleating about some of the Australian tactics, not only the Wallabies but also some of the provincial teams that played, the Lions weren't exactly squeaky clean. And Mr. Johnson, I mean, he's a tough competitor, but gee, some of the footage here that we can see shows him in a different light.
Yeah, this is phenomenal. I mean, really, Martin Johnson is one of the better footballers in the world, and particularly in his position, he's certainly in the top couple. And I mean, you can just see the elbows going in. What he's doing with his hands there, I've got absolutely no idea.
Well, this will tell you what he's doing with his hands. Ask Nathan Gray.
So that looked like an eye, and it looked like a hand going in there. Now, they were, and from speaking to some of the players that played against them, from just those discussions, and from things that you can see like that, they're amongst the dirtiest side that I think's come to this country. And I guess the uproar came in the other direction, where Duncan McRae had his little incident, and it was tried to be deflected back on the Australian players. I'm not saying the Australians were lily white, but certainly the Lions' tactics were unbelievable.
Yeah, well, you don't condone, tactics like Duncan McRae, but it certainly was both ways. And just how niggly were they out there?
Oh, certainly extremely niggly, but I think that, well, for me personally, it gives me a little bit of confidence when someone's got to resort to those tactics, because they've obviously got deficiencies in their rugby skill. Yeah. So, I don't mind, well, not so much getting your eyeball massaged, but certainly it's a physical game and you're not playing touch footy, and you've got to expect that the amount of testosterone out there, some guys lose their heads a little bit and take it a bit too far.
OK, well, that's history now. The Wallabies winning their first ever series against the Lions, and it was a fitting end to Rod Macqueen's tenure as the Wallaby coach. And as Tim Wharton reports, he started in 1997 when Australian rugby was in tatters, and he left it when there was nothing left to win and certainly nothing left to prove.
I've had a great few years. It's been a privilege and an honour for me, and I suppose from that point of view, I'll always look back at it, with happy memories, and hopefully I'll have an involvement in some way, probably in consulting or whatever, with rugby in the future. But it's been a very enjoyable few years.
It seems hard to imagine that Rod Macqueen's reign has come to an end. After 4 years of guiding the Wallabies to the pinnacle of world rugby, the Australian coach has called it quits. Many understandably are questioning why he'd want to step down, but the reasons are simple. Macqueen never intended to stay long. The Wallabies' job was always a short-term proposition, and he felt it was time to hand over the reins to his successor, Eddie Jones.
I was due to go on for an additional 4 games, but I really looked at the situation. You know, Eddie's been with me since day one. He's done a great job with Australia A and obviously the Brumbies against the Lions. And you know, I think it's a very easy decision to make because Eddie's right to take over. And from my point of view, I think it's in the best interest of the team to have a new coach now with fresh ideas, particularly in a tough year like this. And from my point of view, I suppose that, you know, I'm very, I guess, keen at the moment with the series coming up. But once you start to question yourself and wonder how good your enthusiasm is there, I think that it is time to give it away as well.
Before leading the Wallabies to their dizzying heights, Rod Macqueen started out as a back rower with Sydney's Warringah club. He was never a great player, but there was no question about his coaching prowess. He enjoyed success with the Rats, New South Wales and eventually the ACT Brumbies, Macqueen guiding the Super 12 side to the final in 1997.
Joe Roth, he's away. This will be try number 15 in Super 12 for Joe Roth.
But as the Brumbies soared, the Wallabies were struggling. The last straw, a 39-point thrashing by the Springboks.
This is a chance for Erasmus in.
At wits' end, Australian officials turned to Macqueen, but as the new coach quickly discovered, it wasn't going to be an easy job.
I've got to say, it took me a bit by surprise. I didn't realise just how hard it was. I'd come out of a provincial situation where we were quite professional in everything we did, etc. But when you've got the sort of the eyes of the nation on you, it's quite a difference, particularly as far as lifestyle. I think the first week was an absolute shock to both myself and Liz, my wife. And I started to wonder what I'd done at that stage, because obviously your life's not yourself and your own nearly as much as it was. But having said that, I think that I worked into it and I've enjoyed myself throughout the time that I've been there.
Here they go, Roberto Grau. Can Australia hold on? It's a try.
It didn't take long for Macqueen to soon realise changes had to be made. It was going to be a huge challenge, but having recovered from a brain tumour in the early 90s, he was more than up to the job.
Rod came in with such a professional attitude, with an obsession with planning and preparation, that we hadn't seen anything like that before.
It's now history that Rod Macqueen pushed the Wallabies to unparalleled success. But of all the trophies and victories, the greatest highlight was winning the World Cup 2 years ago.
Attempt, lovely inside pass. Gregan to Finnegan. Go for the Lion Man. And he gets there.
I think the World Cup's got to be the epitome of it, because we took 2 years to basically work towards that. Had a lot of sacrifices along the way, and I think when you do something like that, you know, it's even greater. It's taken a long time, and when you make sacrifices like that, the rewards are much better, and you realise you've probably earned them in the long run. And to see the amount of time that the players have put in over that period of time, and then to see the success that they achieved was very, very special from my point of view.
But while there has been phenomenal success, there has also been sacrifice. Macqueen admitting it's been hard at times juggling the demands of his players.
It's always tough when you've got to tell a player that they're not in the side. You've got to tell a player they're dropped or they didn't make it. The niceties, of course, are always to tell a player that they've made it in the test side. But I've tried always to be as honest as possible in that, and sometimes that doesn't go down too well. And they are the hardships. I suppose it's very lonely job sometimes, coaching.
Of course, as a Wallaby coach, you're also cop a lot of media attention. I mean, you've had a lot of success, and with that, the standards have risen. And that in turn means that the media sometimes is just waiting for you to have a fall. How do you cop that?
Yeah, that's, you know, it's always been a little bit stressful from my point of view. I suppose that, you know, I've always been someone who hasn't liked too much criticism, I must be honest, but in this job you've just got to take it. I think constructive criticism is always good. I think it makes you sort of work on your standards, etc. And it's just when it gets personal, as it has with some of the players in particular, I think that that's been unfair to them. And you know, I certainly haven't enjoyed that side of it, but we haven't had a lot of it, and we've had a pretty good run. So, you know, I've got to say that's one area that I certainly won't miss too much.
Regardless of his feelings, Rod Macqueen has always been professional in regard to his work, and that showed during his final week in charge. The Wallabies were aiming to be the first Australian team to win a series against the British and Irish Lions, and his team's preparation was his sole concern. Thoughts of retirement would have to wait.
I'm trying to stay as absolutely focused on the task as I possibly can to make sure that you know, the fact that I'm retiring isn't going to affect in any way the team's preparation. Making sure that we dot the I's and cross the T's along the way, and that we have as normal a sort of preparations as we can for sort of a match of this magnitude.
But while Macqueen was downplaying his imminent departure, his players were more than willing to sing his praises.
Rod's helped me certainly throughout my career. He gave me an opportunity with the Brumbies, and he made the move for me from fullback to 5'8", so he's been very instrumental in my career.
Yeah, there's no doubt that Rod has given great service to Australian rugby, and he has played a huge part in getting our team to where it is today, and you know, would love to see him go out a winner.
Finally, it was time to play. The Wallabies were out to make history, while the Lions were just as determined to stop them in their tracks.
There's 3-on-2 here. Overlap, it has to be a try. Robinson! Here's Walker. Roth and Herbert. Wilkinson takes it. Regan wants it quickly. Here it is. It's a try number 2 for Daniel Herbert. Unbelievable kick there by Matthew Burke.
As the clock ticked down to the final seconds, just 6 points separated the two sides, and Macqueen's men were determined to hang on.
And this is it for Australia.
As Stadium Australia erupted, the emotions poured out in the Australian coach's box. The Wallabies had done it, beating the Lions for the first time in a series in 102 years. The celebrations would run long and hard, and rightfully so. And in the thick of them was Rod Macqueen, the coach summing up the night with a few simple words.
And to everyone out there, it's bloody good to be Australian. Thank you.
So goodbye, Rod Macqueen, and thank you for your service. You helped create a golden era for Australian rugby, and you will be missed, but your legacy will live on.
I think Rod Macqueen will be remembered as one of the great change agents in Australian rugby, not only as a highly successful, probably the most successful coach ever, but a real agent of change, someone who changed the manner and style and professionalism of coaching in this country.
Yes, the Macqueen record will be hard to beat. Just for the record, under his coaching, the Wallabies played 43 tests, 134. There was 1 draw and 8 losses for a 79% record. They had the better of the other heavyweights, 5 from 7 against New Zealand, 5 from 8 against South Africa, 3 wins and a draw from 5 tests against England, and 3 from 3 against France. Just 3 losses at home out of 22 tests, and the trophy cabinet is bulging. I guess now, Phil Kearns, we should reveal the rumour going around town that seeing Rod's going to be in Sydney this weekend when the Wallabies are playing. You're inviting everyone to his house on the Northern Beaches, is that right? He'll probably he'll want a bit of company?
Yeah, there is a big party at Rod's place. He's just off the beach at Longreef there, and I think he's got a big backyard, nice spa, and I think they can fit a couple of thousand into that spa.
All 3 of you have played underneath him, and he leaves a pretty good legacy.
Yeah, certainly. He's taken Australian rugby to being a dominant sport in the world, and also a dominant participation interest sport in Australia, and it's fantastic to see. And I think that he deserves credit for all of that work.
He gave you some early opportunities. 97, the Brumbies.
Yeah, he said
61, Australia 22. Not a great day for Australian rugby, and there are 5 survivors from that day. Michael Foley, George Gregan, Owen Finnegan, Joe Roth and Matt Cobain. They'll be looking for a better result. Stephen Larkham was there as well, and James Holbeck, you were there as well. And that was in fact the last test you played for Australia prior to getting a little bit of a taste this year.
Yeah, it was my last test. and it was a disappointing way to go out. We were all very embarrassed by our performance, and I was actually sin-binned, and a lot of the blame was actually put on my shoulders, so it was a pretty tough moment for me.
And Bernie, what about you? Obviously, it doesn't bring back too many fond memories.
No, it was a pretty poor performance from the boys. I think certainly we were very disappointed when Jimmy got sent off. We felt that he lost the game for us.
You're not going to live this one down for a little while. If Campo had to go through the pass with Mardo for all of those weeks while the Lions were here, you've only got to endure this one for a week anyway. But how tough is it? All of you have played at Loftus, Versfeld and Pretoria. How tough is it?
Well, I'm not sure. A lot of people are saying that the altitude of things are overrated, but after the 97 game, a lot of the guys, their heart rates were right up, and even for an hour after the game, their heart rates were still up around the 160 mark and had to go to hospital. So the conditions there are very tough physically, and I know the boys are going to have a very tough game this weekend.
But the Brumbies have done it before, haven't they?
Yeah, well, I've only ever played there for the Brumbies, so certainly it's a tough stadium up there in the high veld. You know, they speak all sorts of languages up there, and not much of it is friendly. So, but certainly I've played there twice. It's been very difficult, and very happy to come out of there with a win, actually.
And the Springboks, they're going to be pretty tough again because
Jones, because Laney would have known all about what Rod was planning to do against the South Africans.
Yeah, we actually, for the first part of the international season, we were changing all our moves, all the names of our moves, so that Tim Lane and the Springboks wouldn't know what we were running against them. And I suppose that's taken us up to date now. We've got different moves, different names, so Tim won't know what's going on. Probably didn't know what was going on anyway. I think Eddie will obviously bring a few new ideas into the side, but it'll basically be the same structure as what Rod Macqueen had there, you know, certainly for the first part of this Tri-Nation series.
They didn't look all that impressive, the Springbok backline.
I think the best scrum I've seen around for probably 5 or 6 years at least, and Australia, certainly the second test and parts of the third test, they were pretty impressive, but the Lions were outstanding. So Australia really haven't got a combination up front. Yeah, they're trying to get one, and it often takes, you know, 2 or 3 years for a front row to work together before they're actually feeling the combination and getting strong. And Australia, this is a brand new front row, and it's going to take them a couple of years as well.
Quite amazing, isn't it? Nick Stiles, just a couple of test caps. Rod Moore, you know, 2 or 3 test caps now, and yet they come up against all these experienced front rowers. But it looks as if there's plenty of potential to work with because they have been holding their own on and off.
Yeah, there's plenty to work with, but there's just a long way to go. It is really, it's just time. I mean, you can teach guys and you can show them technique, but unless they're practicing on the field, that's where you're going to learn it.
Now, Stephen Larkham, you've been alongside George Gregan on many occasions, and it's going to be interesting, the battle of the scrum halves this weekend. Joost van der Westhuizen under a bit of pressure from the media in Australia saying, well, he's not going to be around in 2003, so should they be looking elsewhere now? So Joost has got a few knockers to try and silence this weekend, and of course George has been in the best form of his career, so that's going to be interesting to see how the old combatants go head to head.
Yeah, Eales has always been a very good player. I think this year he struggled a little bit behind his forwards in the Super 12 competition, but when he steps up to the international arena, he always puts in solid performances, and they always seem to battle well out on the paddock.
He did some nice touches last week, but also, we'll see here, this was uncharacteristic. He had a man on the inside and just kicked aimlessly. And a shot of him after this incident here, saw him shaking his head, and he knew that he'd taken the wrong option. And now George, he was under lots of pressure in that series against the Lions, but his option taking was good, and he's just solid, isn't he?
Yeah, he is, but also he's got guys around him giving him the options, where Joost doesn't seem to have that luxury around him, and I think Joost in a lot of occasions is taking it upon himself to try and win the games himself rather than using the guys around him, because the guys around him aren't doing their job as well as what they may.
Recent test results in the Republic don't make good reading for the Aussies. In the Tri-Nations, we've had just the 1 test win since 1996. That was last year. Remember Sterling Mortlock kicking the winning penalty to clinch the Tri-Nations crown for the first time. And the Australian record in Pretoria is not flash. Apart from the draw in 1963 and the win over Northern Transvaal in 1992, they've been on the receiving end in all other matches, especially in 97, the Boks winning 61-22. Hello everyone. everyone, I'm Greg Clark. Thanks for joining us as we take another look inside rugby. Joining me in the studio tonight to review the Wallabies' opening Tri-Nations loss to the Springboks will be Greg Martin and Manny Edmonds. We'll hear from the author of the John Eales biography, and we check out the State of the Union with ARU boss John O'Neill. Everything from the 2003 World Cup planning to club rugby. But first, let's check what's been making news. Now, as expected, John Eales will bring down the curtain on his great career when the Wallabies played the All Blacks at Stadium Australia on September 1. The Wallaby skipper confirmed his retirement plans while launching his biography this week.
It's been accepted that John Eales would pull down the curtain on his illustrious rugby career at the end of this season. But he didn't make a definite decision until after the first ever series win against the British Lions. Now, with his playing days almost over, he can reflect on what have been the standout moments.
Probably my singular greatest moment was being able to be a part of a World Cup winning team with Rod and the Wallabies in 1999, obviously 91 as well. But 99 was extra special for me because my whole family was able to be there with me for the occasion. They were all at the ground watching the game. They were able to celebrate afterwards. So years down the track, when it's a much better situation rather than having to bore them all down the track with all saying, "Oh, it's great, you should have been there." They can actually recount tales to me what it was like to be in the grandstand watching that day.
For all of his brilliance as a captain and player, John Eales is a very down-to-earth bloke to whom family and friends are everything.
And there's been no bigger influence on me and who I am as a person than my family. And starting with Jack and Rosa, been great parents the whole way along, very supportive. Mum's probably been less supportive as far as the rugby's concerned. She wanted me to stop playing when I was 14, and every year after that she's been wanting me to stop playing.
Eales took the opportunity of his biography launch to make the official announcement of his impending retirement. The book is simply called John Eales, although author and former Wallaby Peter Fitzsimons wanted something grander.
I struggled with what to call it. I wanted to call it John Eales, he played for Australia, because I thought we all grew up with that sort of term. That bloke there, he played for Australia. For me, I think John Eales, what do you say? He played for Australia. Another idea I had was John Eales' mighty small shoes to fill. The story of John Eales by the man he replaced in the Australian second row, Peter Fitzsimons.
In contrast, Eales' departure will leave gigantic boots to fill.
But even if I didn't want to be involved in rugby, I'd have no choice, because rugby becomes very much an ingrained part of your life. It's what you do, it's what you know, it's the people. It's all about the people. And if there's one thing I'm proudest about rugby as a sport, rugby as a game, rugby as a culture, is it's the people involved. There's no doubt that rugby people are by and large good people.
While he won't be in Wallaby colours after September 1st, John Eales will continue to be the face of Australian rugby. ARU boss John O'Neill has created a position in the organisation for Eales, and he couldn't be happier about the Wallaby skipper maintaining his close links to the game.
To do what he's done, to play in the second row, or lock as they call it these days, from 1991 to 2001 at the absolute highest level, to captain your team to all the wonderful victories, and yet to remain a terribly decent, humble ornament to the game is quite extraordinary. I mean, he's a very special bloke. The ARU is employing him to continue working for us. He'll be heavily involved with the ARU in the lead up to World Cup in 2003. He'll be the face of rugby in many respects, but importantly, and at his suggestion, he wants to be very involved in the under-19s, under-21s and the sort of developing Wallabies to really inculcate to those players what it means to be a Wallaby.